Have you ever stopped to wonder how the apps and systems we use every single day are actually built to keep our data safe? Well, I can tell you it's not some kind of secret magical code. It's really about a fundamental set of rules, a playbook for building what you could call a digital fortress. So let's open that playbook together and get into the 12 core principles of secure design. So let's just start with that big question, right? How are the truly secure systems really built? How do the pros build systems that can actually withstand constant attacks? You might think it's this impossibly complex thing, but the core ideas, they're surprisingly simple and incredibly powerful. And that right there is the key. It is not magic. It's a playbook filled with time-tested principles. And what's cool is that once you understand these rules, you start seeing them everywhere. And you also start to see exactly where things go wrong when these rules get ignored.
All right, so using our fortress analogy, let's start at the very front gates. The first line of defense is all about controlling access. Who are we letting inside? And maybe more importantly, what are they allowed to do once they're in? This whole process is governed by three absolutely crucial principles. First up, we have the principle of least privilege. Now, this is one of the most important, like the golden rule in all of security. The idea is so simple. A user or a program should only have the exact permissions it needs to do its job, and nothing more. The example on the slide is perfect. A bank cashier needs to see your balance, sure, but they should never have the power to change the bank's interest rates. This is how you prevent a simple account compromise from turning into a total catastrophe. Next, we've got separation of duties. This one is all about making sure no single person has too much power. Think about it like launching a nuclear missile in the movies. It always takes at least two people turning their keys at the same time, right? Well, the same logic applies here. In a company, one person might request a payment, but a completely different person has to approve it. It's a simple check and balance that prevents fraud and stops one person from going rogue. And the third principle for locking down those gates is complete mediation. This means the system basically has the memory of a goldfish when it comes to trust. Just because you logged in 5 minutes ago doesn't mean you get a free pass for the rest of the day. Nope. Every single time you try to open a file or change a setting, the system has to check all over again. Hey, are you still allowed to do this? No shortcuts ever. Okay, so we've secured the gates. Now let's talk about the fortress walls themselves. You see, a truly secure system isn't just about who you let in, it's about how the entire thing is designed from the ground up to be inherently strong and resilient. And this brings us to a really important idea, economy of mechanism. Or, to put it simply, keep it simple. There's this common myth that more complex security is somehow better security. But honestly, the opposite is true. Every extra feature, every additional line of code, it's just another place for a bug or a vulnerability to hide. Simple designs are just so much easier to understand, to check, and ultimately to secure. Now, this next one is really interesting because it feels so counterintuitive at first. It's called open design, and it means your security should never ever rely on hiding how it works. That's just security through obscurity, and it's a terrible idea. Think about it. The strongest encryption in the world, the stuff that protects our data every day, has its design published for everyone to see. Its strength doesn't come from being a secret. It comes from the math being so unbelievably solid that even when attackers know exactly how it works, they still can't break it. Okay, let's look at two principles that are basically two sides of the same coin: modularity and isolation. Both are all about containing damage. On the left, modularity is about building your system like it's made of Lego bricks. If there's a bug in the search feature, it doesn't take down the payment system because they're separate blocks. Then on the right, isolation takes that a step further, building actual digital walls between processes. This is huge in the cloud. It means malware in one customer's virtual machine is totally trapped and can't escape to infect the main computer. And this idea of containment feeds right into our next principle, minimization. So the attack surface is just all the possible entry points an attacker could try to use. Every feature, every open network connection, every service running on a server, it all adds up. Minimization is just the simple goal of shrinking that surface as much as you can. If a feature isn't absolutely essential, turn it off. If a port isn't needed, close it. It's common sense. Fewer doors and windows mean fewer places for a burglar to get in. Okay, so we've built some strong walls, but what happens when the fortress is actually under attack? And how do we deal with the most unpredictable part of any system? The people using it. This next section is all about our active defenses, and you guessed it, the human factor. This is defense in depth, and it's the idea that you should never, ever rely on a single security measure. Instead, you build layers, kind of like the concentric walls of an old medieval castle. So maybe an attacker gets past your outer firewall. Okay, but now they have to deal with an intrusion detection system. If they get past that, they discover all the data is encrypted anyway. And if they try to log in with stolen credentials, they get stopped cold by multi-factor authentication. You see the point? The failure of any one layer doesn't mean it's game over. Next up, we have fail-safe defaults. This principle flips a common and dangerous approach on its head. Instead of starting with everything open and then trying to lock it down, you start with everything locked tight. By default, access is denied. A new user account can't do anything. A new firewall blocks all traffic. You have to explicitly and deliberately grant permission for everything. It's a much, much safer way to start. And now we get to the human element. Psychological acceptability is this crucial recognition that your security is completely worthless if people don't actually use it. If your security system is a huge pain, your users will find ways around it. They'll write their passwords on sticky notes, they'll disable features, they'll do whatever it takes to get their job done. The absolute best security is both effective and convenient. This is exactly why things like Face ID or fingerprint sensors have taken off. It's incredibly strong security that feels completely effortless. Okay, let's quickly touch on two final principles that are related. On the left is a new one, least common mechanism. The idea here is to minimize the stuff that different users or programs have to share. For example, if two ops use the same temporary folder, one might be able to read sensitive data that the other one left behind. By keeping them separate, you prevent that information from leaking. And this is pretty similar to modularity, which we already talked about. So think of it this way. Least common mechanism keeps users from messing with each other, while modularity keeps different system parts from messing with each other.
So there we have it, our 12 principles. But, theory is one thing. Let's see what happens out in the wild. In this last section, we're going to run a quick stress test, a couple of real-world scenarios, to see these principles in action, and what happens when they get ignored.
Okay, scenario 1. An attacker finds a way to sneak past the company's main firewall. They are officially inside the network. But before they can grab any data, an alarm goes off, the security team gets an alert, and the attack is stopped dead in its tracks. So, take a second. Think back on the principles we just covered. Which one of them clearly just saved the day here? Which one prevented a simple breach from becoming a total disaster? If you said defense in depth, you're absolutely right. The first layer, the firewall, it failed. It happens. But it wasn't the only layer. That intrusion detection system was the second line of defense, and it held strong. This is the perfect example of why relying on just one single security control is so incredibly dangerous. All right, now for a much more painful scenario. An attacker manages to steal the login and password for a receptionist. Using that access, they get into the company's servers and just delete all of the financial records. Everything, causing absolutely catastrophic damage. This is a classic and tragic violation of the principle of least privilege. You just have to ask yourself, why on earth did a receptionist's account have the power to delete financial records? It didn't need that permission to do its job. And by giving that account way too much access, the company turned what should have been a minor breach into a full-blown existential threat. And that's the playbook. 12 principles that are really the foundation of how secure systems are designed. They're not secrets, but they are incredibly powerful when they're used correctly. So the final question is for you. As you go about your day, using your phone, your apps, your software at work, can you see these principles in action? Can you spot where they're being used well? And maybe, just maybe, where they're being ignored?